We're attempting to get a greyish bluey hue for Snaga's skin to best reflect how he looked in the film, so we start by base coating all of his skin with CELESTRA grey. We want to give Snaga a real grizzled orcish appearance and accentuate more of his facial features by defining his drawn, stretched, haggard skin. So now we're going to apply a fairly heavy wash of non-oil mixed with a little bit of Drakenhof Nightshade. This will sink nicely into the recesses as well as bring just a smidge of colour depth which will carry over into the model's finished features. Apply a layer with 50-50 mix of CELESTRA grey and ULTHUAN grey, being careful to avoid the previous washes showing in the recesses. We're picking ULTHUAN grey here not only because it's a natural progression from CELESTRA, but also because it will help accentuate again the washed out look of the highlights whilst mirroring slightly the blue we added from the glaze. Further highlight with pure ULTHUAN grey. Concentrate more on the upper raised areas of facial and muscular detail, notably down the bridge of the nose, around his cheekbones and jawline, and the tendons and knuckle joints across the backs of his hands. Finally, apply a dot highlight to the uppermost raised areas with a 50-50 mix of ULTHUAN grey and PALID witch flesh. This will just help the finished details over his flesh pop. We're painting the eye slightly differently to normal here. To create depth over the pupil, we need to dot 2 pinprick amounts of PALID witch either side of the iris. Then, using WycH flesh, carefully paint the pupil in between these. The black in the centre will make the eye look more toned and natural than if the whole eye was painted white beforehand, as we usually do. Orc armour is some of the most ill-maintained and grubby, crude-looking gear in Middle-earth. To replicate this, we're going to be using some extremely dark tones for Snaga's armour and blade. To start this off, base coat all the metals on the model with an approximate mix of 30% Leadbelcher and 70% Abaddon black. This will appear near black, but will still have a small degree of shine akin to the metal long since being cared for. Next we're going to be applying 2 washes, the first of none oil to further accentuate the Mordor look we're going for, and once dry, the second will be a 50-50 mix of Agrax Earthshade and a Thonian Camo Shade. Now for something a bit different. We're going to show you a quick method by which to weather Snaga's armour. Using a sponge off cut, randomly stipple over the metals with squig orange. Be careful here not to overload the sponge, as you'll end up with random big splodges of paint, which won't look natural. Remember, you can always add more paint if unhappy, but you cannot take it away once it's applied and dried. We repeat this process a second time, but with a lighter stippling of Fire Dragon Bright for the less rusted areas. You can paint this on if you wish, but we find the randomness of a sponge texture really adds to the authenticity of the model. Finally, edge highlight all of Snaga's armour and metals with a 50-50 mix of LEADRELCHER and PALID witch flesh. This will accentuate the fact that it's metal, but be muted enough in tone for it not to appear bright and shiny like other such armours in Middle-earth. Paint all the leather straps and the patchy hair on the back of Snaga's head with dried bark. Edge highlight now with Gawthor Brown. Take care to try and pick out the individual hairs along the hairline to create natural depth. Base coat all of the small cloth sections with Stormvermin fur. These can be hard to identify as they usually poke out through the armour and leather, but the main parts can be found along the arms, legs and thighs. Wash all of these areas with Nuln Oil. You can also now apply this to Snaga's hair to give it a lank, unclean look. Once dry, edge highlight again with pure Stormvermin fur. Base coat all of the fur as well as the spines over Snaga's back with Rakarth's flesh. Wash these with Agrak's Earthshade. Once dry, carefully start picking out the individual strands of fur with PALID witch flesh, being careful to leave the Agrak showing in the recesses once again. With the spines, highlight these by painting concentric circles around the outer ridges going out towards the tips. Finally, apply a pinpoint highlight of white scar to the very tips of the fur and the very upper and outer edges of the spines, as well as the very tips to make them look sharp and orcish.